So you have, again, a lot of these nonprofits right now. Workers Strike Back, that's another group that's funding some of this stuff, who are holding, press conferences on the side. Or last night I attended a meeting at a local church here in Chicago right before this protest, and it was a group of Marxists who, again, were talking about how to bring a revolution and leverage these national opportunities and moments to push their agenda. I've seen signs against Kamala and Joe Biden calling them war criminals. At the same time, you have signs, people holding signs against Trump. So again, it's not just the focus on both parties, it's actually pushing an ideology and an agenda right now. Again, these protest groups are being fueled by the communist, Marxist, leftist groups who all have a different plan for America.
Good Wednesday to you. We are halfway through the work week, but more importantly, we're over halfway through the DNC. Please make this stop. Please make it stop. Before we get too far into it, though, a point of personal privilege. Today is our birthday, our anniversary, the 1 year since we launched the Sean Spicer Show. You remember that out in Milwaukee? Just a ragtag bunch of kids trying to make it good. And wow, has that year been unbelievable because of you. People subscribing and sharing. We don't have some big ad budget or Hollywood executives. You have subscribed to us, have shared us with your friends, and the growth has been unbelievable. The sponsors of this show, you know who you are. Thank you for your belief in us. The First, thank you for being part of this. This has been an unbelievable year, and I'm looking forward to year two. And oh my gosh, we have an exciting 80 days to go, and then hopefully a Trump administration to really get into. Let me get into it, though, because you're not here to hear me pontificate. If you thought night one was bad, night two, it was schizophrenic. I was like, what are we doing here, folks? Bernie Sanders, he was up there like, the rich need to pay their fair share. Healthcare for all. And then it was JD Pritzker who was talking about being a billionaire, and then Michelle Obama talking about why we don't need any money, and Barack Obama going after. I mean, anyway, I was like, what are we doing here? And then, by the way, Doug Emhoff gets up and talks about Kamala, and I will tell you this, he did a good job. I got to be honest with you. I mean, like, I thought Doug Emhoff actually, for the first time, somebody told us who this woman was. Just being objective. And I get it, he's her husband. He has to say nice things, right? We all know that. But he did a good job. And I'm like, you dum-dums, that's, hey, sorry, no more free advice after this. If you're going to win an election where no one knows anything about you, that's the guy that can paint a picture instead of these washed up politicians. Hey, again, I'm not going to tell them what to do. Not going to do it. Not going to do it. But it was just so weird. All of these people who I didn't get it. I didn't understand that. All right. Before we get any further, I want to tell you about what I have changed in my workout routine. For those of you who have listened to me in the past whine, I've got hip issues, both of them, by the way. Both of them need to be replaced. My knee needs to be fixed. I've been doing PT for that. But one of the things that I did is I switched over to gravity defier shoes. These are the ones that I train in. I go to the gym, I work out in, and then I go for walks. We walk the dog a lot. And then I've got a separate one that I run in, right? But they are unbelievable when it comes to the cushioning and support that they give you. They come with these custom orthotics that are amazing. But it's like stepping onto a pillow or a trampoline, no kidding, because they actually have this stuff called Verso technology. When you look at this heel, I mean, it's unbelievable. And I'm a guy, like I said, with my knees and my hips, I can tell. Once you try gravity defier shoes, you will not go back. The technology, the support is like no other shoe. And I've tried them all. Believe me, I've tried them all. You will not go back. And if you go to GDEFY, .com, you can get your gravity defier shoes. They make shoes, sandals, running shoes, you name it. They've got them all there in all sorts of styles. That's why I said I've got 2 different pairs. And if you go now and you use code SPICER30, you can get $30 off your order of $150 or more. GDEFY.com, code SPICER30. Check out Gravity Defier shoes. I'm telling you, total game changer. If you've got knee, hip, mobility, support, or you just want a better shoe, you will never go back. Trust me on this. All right. Last night, one of the big speakers was Michelle Obama. Okay. I want to play you what she said. This is important. She talks about her mom and how she brought her up. Take a listen.
You see, my mom, in her steady, quiet way, lived out that striving sense of hope every single day of her life. She believed that all children, all people have value, that anyone can succeed if given the opportunity. She and my father didn't aspire to be wealthy. In fact, they were suspicious of folks who took more than they needed. They understood that it wasn't enough for their kids to thrive if everyone else around us was drowning. So my mother volunteered at the...
Okay. All right. What the heck is that? If you have more than... First of all, that's called communism. But just stop for a second. Put all that aside, because we've heard enough of that all week. This is Kamala Harris. I get why she's talking about it. I would have her speak too. Comrade, if you're suspicious of people who have more than you need, then you can be generous. You can give to charities. You can help churches and organizations to help people in need. What are you talking about? Oh, by the way, just how are you living though, Michelle? And again, God bless you. Welcome. This is the American way. You're doing really well, right? 3 houses. Check this out. No, I'm glad. This is what I want. I want every American to do well. I want you, the next generation, to do blah, blah, blah. The American dream, live it. But don't give me this speech about suspicious of other people when this is how you live. You don't seem to care about your Netflix and book deals. You don't spread the wealth. You don't give it all away. Do you? When you're out in the vineyard or in Hawaii or in DC? This is so friggin' hypocritical. It's unbelievable. Trump out, by the way, with a brand new ad. They know they're on message. They're on fire this week. Let me play it for you.
Kamala Harris's radical ideas keep ending in tragedy. Harris raised money to fund the release of violent criminals like Sean Michael Tillman.
The Minnesota Bail Fund, promoted by Kamala Harris, recently helped secure the release of a repeat felon who just got charged with murder. Sean Michael Tillman shot and killed a passenger on a train platform after reportedly being released from jail 3 weeks prior.
Harris's liberal ideas get people killed.
I'm Donald J. Trump, and I approve this message.
This is it. They are on message. Tons of money going into these battleground states, hitting her on the crime issue, hitting her on the economic issue, her communist, socialist policies. This is unbelievable. Another big night tonight. Bill Clinton speaking. I'm sure, what is he going to talk to us about? How to treat women, huh? Tim Walz is going to talk tonight. Big article out about his issues. We'll talk about that tomorrow. We got a great panel coming up. And as I mentioned, James Blair from the Trump campaign on Friday. By the way, that's a big one. You're not going to want to miss that one. Subscribe, hit that notification button, because we're going to go through the ground game and figure out where they're doing well. Today on the show, Jonathan Choe from the Front Lines. It's an organization funded through TPSU, Turning Point USA, Charlie Kirk's organization, to bring issues and stories to us that we're not getting. And then we're going to have a conversation with Dan Turntine, a Democratic senior strategist, about how last night was. And I think you're going to be shocked about how Dan and senior Democrats perceived last night. Before I do that, I want to tell you about something else unexpected that could happen in your life. You don't know when you could lose power. It could happen today. It could happen next month, in a year. It could be for an hour, a day, weeks, or even months. When they talk about not just natural disasters, but hits on the electrical grid, that's serious stuff for days on end. And you need to be prepared. I am. In my house, I have a Patriot Power Generator 2000X. And if you go to 4patriots.com/Sean Spicer, if you go to 4patriots.com/Spicer, you can have one too. Go to 4patriots.com/Spicer. The cool thing is it completely runs on solar panels that come free with it. No gas needed. And if you've ever dealt with a generator, you know what I'm talking about. You have to run to the gas station. You have to hope it's open. You have to hope it takes credit cards, because if the electrical grid is down, that's going to be a problem, right? You have to worry that you can then fill it up. How long will the gas last, right? All of these things, not the case with the Patriot Power Generator 2000X. Hours. It will run the most powerful things in your house, your refrigerator, television, computers, tablets, whatever, and it's completely portable. Do not wait. Get a Patriot Power Generator 2000X right now. Be ready in time of an emergency. Go to forpatriots.com/Spicer and join me in getting one of these. All right, guys, I want to bring in Jonathan Choe from the front lines. It's a part of TP USA. It's exposing issues. What's really going on in Chicago? How bad are these protests? And what is the media not telling us? Let's welcome in Jonathan. Hey, Jonathan, thanks for joining us from Chicago. How is it there?
Depends who you ask. If you're inside the DNC, you're having a great time. It's safe and sound. If you're outside covering the rioting last night and the protests, it's another story. But just a wild time in the Windy City.
So are we getting, if we're not following you, are we getting a sense of what it's really like outside of there, an accurate picture?
Yeah, that's a great question. I've yet to see all of the coverage on, left-wing corporate media, the NBC, ABCs, and CBSs of the world, but I've been really following a lot of the independents on the ground. And, Sean, that's the key right now, following the reporters who are there right now, live streaming on the front lines. Last night in front of the Israeli, consulate, there was so much insanity happening. The flag burning, Israeli flag, U.S. flag burning, the pushing, the shoving, the arrests. A lot of that wasn't caught on mainstream corporate media's channels.
Come on! Free, free, not all glory, not all glory. There we go! Yeah! Yeah! Hey, the American flag. Idiot. It's our country. It's our country. This country, burn it down! Burn it down!
The power of the iPhone right now and the streamers right now, they're capturing everything, and there are going to be even more protests tonight and tomorrow.
So first, let me ask this. Is it mostly peaceful, as they claim?
It usually starts off loud, rambunctious, a lot of chanting, but then last night and the night before, it just gets out of control because you have far-left activists, the Anarchists, Antifa, people who are there to actually cause trouble getting into the mix. The first night we saw, activists tear down part of the fencing and security perimeter around the United Center in Chicago. And then last night in front of the Israeli consulate, you saw fights breaking out, Antifa shoving cops, people burning U.S. flags, other, counter-protesters there waving Israeli flags, getting spit at and yelled at. So again, usually it all starts to devolve at the end of the night.
Okay. But getting back to my question, I want to, during like the BLM riots, which were mostly peaceful, there was a lot of vandalism and destruction of property. If you walk through Chicago the morning after these riots, is that the case? Or is it like just people to people, a lot of yelling or a lot of, trash and just that kind of stuff? Or is it actual vandalism?
2 days in a row now, I followed the protest route, and it's been actually pretty decent compared to 2020. I was covering the BLM riots in Seattle, and I saw the aftermath. I saw the broken windows. I saw the spray paint and the graffiti all over the walls of small businesses. I don't see that in Chicago, and I think it's really because I'm seeing the police force out here 10x compared to the protesters right now, and they're not messing around. Chicago police, give them a lot of credit for controlling the situation, and anytime they see someone trying to vandalize a building or a sidewalk, they immediately swarm them, move in, and arrest.
So this, I was actually, that was my next question. But think about this. Think about you. So let me just get this straight, Jonathan, because I don't want to put words in your mouth. But are you saying that the police are doing their job?
Sean, that's exactly right. I, posted that last night. It was refreshing to actually see officers in a major U.S. city being allowed to do their job, especially here in Chicago. I know Mayor Brandon Johnson has been getting a lot of criticism for his, animosity towards police officers. But at least for the DNC, he's allowing his officers to do their jobs. And again, I can't emphasize enough, Sean, the number of officers. I've covered a lot of protests in my day. I don't think I've ever seen this many officers on the ground in a major U.S. city for these protests.
I think what's interesting to me is that when you hear what you're saying, and at least some of the images that I'm watching, if you do this right, people can protest, and you can prevent violence and destruction and vandalism from happening by letting police do their job. It's the left has kind of created this construct that it's one or the other. But what you're telling me is that actually it's happening correctly.
Yeah, this is the model. And I think what's happening, at least the past couple nights, sends a strong message not only to other far left activists bent on causing destruction in other cities, but also to police agencies out there. I had several police sources contacting me, texting me over the phone from Seattle last night saying, wow, Choe, look at the Chicago cops. They're feeling emboldened. They're making arrests. They're actually going after these thugs. So they're doing a great job. And I hope this, again, sets a new tone and precedent in the U.S.
So what's the grievance, right? It's obviously is it give me a percentage. Is it 100% support of Hamas and pro-Palestinians?
Look, Sean, this is a smorgasbord of protesters and activists who have been bussed and flown in from all over the U.S. Of course, you have a strong Chicago-based contingent, but I want to emphasize these are far-left activists. These are people who hate both sides. They hate the Democrats. They hate the Republicans. You heard chants down with America. You know, these are anarchists. These are people who want to bring a full-blown revolution. They hate free market capitalism. That's who these people are. These people are commies, Marxists, all mixed in, pushing the pro-Hamas agenda as well as reproductive rights and, of course, rights for illegal immigrants.
Yeah, they should feel at home with a bunch of people that are pretty much espousing communist ideas there at the DNC. You know, you talk about them flying in or whatever. Who's paying for all this?
Well, it's really hard to tell. Of course, you hear the name George Soros, thrown around a lot. But I look at the placards of some of these activists holding the signs, and you see groups like, Socialist Alternative. You see other, leftist Jewish groups. So you have, again, a lot of these nonprofits right now. Workers Strike Back. That's another group that's funding some of this stuff, who are holding, press conferences on the side. Or last night I attended a meeting at a local church here in Chicago right before this protest. And it was a group of Marxists who, again, were talking about how to bring a revolution and leverage these national opportunities and moments to push their agenda.
And is it you say they hate everybody.
Anyone who's an actual American, that's what it seems like.
Right. But is it, if you had to sort of maybe narrow it down, is there more just general hatred, if you will, towards everybody? Is it more towards the Democratic Party? Is it to Kamala, the person? Is it to Biden? Or is it just, hey, we're pissed and we're going to protest?
Look, Sean, you've covered and you've watched a lot of these as well. I think it's all of the above. I've seen signs against Kamala and Joe Biden, calling them war criminals. At the same time, you have signs, people holding signs against Trump. So again, it's not just the focus on both parties. It's actually pushing an ideology and an agenda right now. Again, these protest groups are being fueled by the communist, Marxist, leftist groups who all have a different plan for America.
It's just so fascinating. It's how little we actually have gotten to see of this. And, this is how we started the conversation. But it's like if people like you with your iPhone weren't putting this information out, the media would be doing its best to pretend it's not happening.
Yeah, Sean, it really is stunning. I did read a brief blurb on NBC, .com this morning, and they simply described the folks on the ground causing all the destruction and the rioting, militants. But they didn't get into the nuance. And for anyone on the ground, if you look, it's not just the people wearing keffiyehs. You have people dressed in black bloc. There's clearly Antifa out there, clearly leftist, Marxist, socialist, communist groups. And that's not being reported. And that's doing a disservice to Americans.
They've got this Planned Parenthood bus there. And I don't know if you've taken advantage of this, but you can get an abortion or a vasectomy. How have you been able to go by this? Like, is this well attended? Are people getting their free vasectomies?
Yeah, it actually is. And there was a waiting list. So I did go by, but I didn't bother to get in line. I didn't want to wait. And I don't need a vasectomy.
Can you imagine, by the way, like being like, you know what? When we go to the DNC, let's go to the bus. I mean, I'm not anyway. It's literally like there's a line.
Yeah, there's a line. And, again, this is the Democrats pandering to its base and really focusing on reproductive rights. And also now they're bringing in the other narrative. It's not just about the women, it's also about the men. So again, that's why the vasectomy piece is coming in here. So I wasn't able to go inside and take a tour of the bus, but one of my other team members did. And, they're giving tours now. And I'm sure, Sean, you've heard to a lot of influencers, the Democrats flying in influencers from all over the world to go into this bus and talk about how great it is. They give you a tour of a
bus where they give you a snip?
Yeah, that's it. That's exactly the one. People are being given tours. If you want to come down, Sean, you can get a tour.
No, but I will say this. Of all the things that the Democrats and the left have done, I fully support as many of those nut jobs getting vasectomies as possible. I think they should get them earlier in life, too, just so that they don't reproduce. So I hope that line continues and the bus sticks around forever.
Yeah, it's going to be here for a couple more days, Sean.
Okay. I also want to ask you about the recent reports about RFK. His running mate, Nicole Shanahan, was on a podcast yesterday. She kind of alluded to potentially dropping out and supporting Trump. Is that something that you're hearing about among people there? Are they worried, or do they want RFK support? Do they care about RFK? Does he have any support there?
Well, if I'm just going based off of the chants and, the placards and the signs, no mention of RFK. Politically, I think, at least in this race, he's sort of become irrelevant. But yeah, I'm hearing those rumors as well that he's going to drop out in the next few days and support Trump.
Jonathan, aside from like the protests and the vasectomy bus, is there anything else that is happening outside of the confines of the United Center that the media is also not discussing, some sort of undercurrent issue? There was a lot of concern with how they treated Joe Biden night one, right? It was, hey, look, here's your speaking spot at 1 a.m. And then get on a plane and get out of here. Then there's a lot of people who were saying that the reason that Kamala and Tim Walz were in Wisconsin yesterday was to sort of not offend Biden by being there when the Obama spoke, who, by the way, there's no question that a lot of the Biden people feel like they got pushed out for. Is there any story that we're not hearing about that's kind of percolating there?
Well, I haven't been personally focused as much on the inside of the DNC, but yeah, a lot of palace intrigue there. I've been focused primarily on the stories outside of the DNC Convention Center, outside the United Center in McCormick Place. And one of the big issues right now that I think all the delegates are seeing, you just can't ignore the illegal immigration crisis. You have migrants on every single street corner. Initially, Mayor Brandon Johnson was allegedly trying to push all of the illegals outside of the city, but the suburbs of Chicago, the leaders there, they didn't want to have anything to do with it. So you have children, begging on street corners, selling candy. And people right now are just saying they're shocked that this is all happening in America, in a world-class city like Chicago during the DNC.
Normally, they all clean that up. They get rid of the homeless. They get rid of everyone to make it look like it's not an issue. But the migrant issue is a big deal there?
Oh, it's huge, especially near the United Center on the west side and the south side, where you have most of the migrant shelters. And of course, I'm staying at a hotel right now just 10 minutes away from the United Center, and there's a migrant camp of more than 200 just a few blocks away. Now, that's a story I'm going to be covering. And, Sean, this is another story that's being underreported. Think about all the resources being taken away from America's homeless to cater to these illegal immigrants. And I've interviewed several homeless here in Chicago, and they're furious. They're not getting the same services, the same treatment, the same resources.
Look, it's veterans who aren't getting the care because they're pushing out. I know of a story of a school in New York where the family's furious that their kids got kicked out of the school because they're housing illegals there. I mean, it's all sectors. It's not just America's homeless. It's America's veterans. It's America's school kids. I mean, this is unbelievable, and it's all self-inflicted. Jonathan, I appreciate you being with us. The insight is so important because one of the reasons that this show, I think, is helpful and critical is because people like you come on and tell us what we're not hearing. And you've done an excellent job out there really making sure that the mainstream legacy left-wing media can't cover up something from us.
Yeah, Sean, at the end of the day, I always say the video don't lie. I mean, the video is so powerful. I mean,
same thing I say about Kamala Harris.
Platform as well.
All right. Jonathan, stay safe out there. We hope you see you again.
Thanks, Sean, for amplifying the message.
You bet. All right, I want to bring in Dan Turrentine. He is a senior Democratic strategist. He has advised people like Hillary Clinton in the past, and I think his take on last night is going to surprise, if not shock you. Before that, though, I want to tell you about a really good friend of mine, a great guy, Leo Grillo from Delta Rescue. Leo has been rescuing dogs, animals, cats, horses, you name it, for years. He founded Delta Rescue, and if you go to deltarescue.org, you can see what I'm talking about. They provide the veterinary care, the nutritional care for neglected and abused animals of all sorts. And it is a no-kill sanctuary for life. What does that mean? For life. It's not a shelter. They're not looking to place them. They're not going to euthanize them. They're not going to send them anywhere else. You go to Delta Rescue and you're good for life. But Leo's support only goes so far. He can only do so much. He needs our help. Go to deltarescue.org and think about making a contribution. 50, 100, $1,000, it doesn't matter. Anything that helps Leo. And while you're on the site, please go to Delta, check out that estate planning kit on deltarescue.org and see if you can make Delta Rescue part of your estate to make sure that Leo's mission is enduring and lasts for generations and decades to come. Thank you for your consideration. Just please click on deltarescue.org and see what I'm talking about. You won't be disappointed. It will bring a smile to your face to see the work that Leo is doing. All right, I want to bring in Dan Turrentine to show you how the Democrats perceive their convention. Dan, thanks for joining us. From your perspective, how did last night go? I know night one there were some concerns about, how late things went, some potential little concerns from the team Biden about how late his speech was. How did you think both logistically and message-wise last night went for you guys?
Yeah, I mean, look, I definitely would have loved to have gotten more sleep based on how late it went. But I mean, the official schedule they put out last night had Barack Obama coming on stage a few minutes after 11, and he came out a few minutes after 11. So it appears that from their perspective, they were on schedule. I thought it was kind of a good and a bad night. I thought, on the good side, first off, just a hat tip to whoever came up with the idea for the roll call vote. They took what was normally a mundane affair, carried probably only live on C-SPAN and got it trending on Twitter. So, hat tip to that person. I thought Doug Emhoff did a great job kind of humanizing Kamala Harris. I thought he really, gave some insight behind the curtain, so to speak, as to who she is, describing her as really a fierce mother, very protective of his children. That reminded me a little bit of Sarah Palin's kind of mama bear. I thought it really was a good image for her. He segued into her time as a prosecutor. I also thought the video they did at the start of the 10 o'clock hour about her history as a prosecutor was terrific. I actually was surprised they then had the Maryland Senate candidate come out to follow up on that. I know she too is a prosecutor. And then they jumped to IVF, which to me was a little bit of and I'll get to this here in a second. But I thought Doug Emhoff did a great job. The Obamas are, amazing. They are two of the most popular political figures. They are great orators. I thought Michelle Obama really, there was a couple things in that speech. One, I thought the fact that she talked about the dimming of hope the last few years and this depression. I mean, Joe Biden's been president the last few years.
Oh, I don't mean to interrupt, but I'm glad you touched on that because I kept thinking to myself, wow, like that's a ding at Biden, isn't it? It's sort of like.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, look, it's no secret that she has a checkered history with the Bidens. Some of this has to do with the things that have happened with some of the Biden children in their personal life. But yeah, without a doubt, that was a ding at the Bidens. And then I thought, her taking on Trump was almost cathartic. I mean, you could feel it. She does not like Donald Trump. She seethed about the birther movement. She seethed during 2016 at what she thought were, racial dog whistles. And, she came out hot. She did it, Barack Obama did it with a little more of a smile and humor, which is kind of his MO, kind of a la the White House Correspondents' Dinner. But I thought she really kind of, put some markers down for the party about this is going to be a tough slog. Kamala's not going to be the perfect candidate. This was something the Obamas faced in 2012 with the base, which was a little depressed after the 2010 midterms. They were not fully energized in 2011. And I thought she did a great job. I thought Barack Obama also did a great job. I mean, one of the things Democrats are trying to do as they, build the airplane mid-flight with her candidacy is define what this race is about. They have settled on this idea of change, of going forward, not backwards, of hope. He kind of took the halo of Obama and tried to put it on her. I thought when he went to fill the picture in, it sounded a little tone deaf to what's important to voters today. He was talking about healthcare and student debt. And, those were issues that were resonant in his election. Now it's maybe so much this one, but I get what he was trying to do. He was talking about, our better angels, about appealing to, being inclusive and supportive. And I thought he, as he usually does, he's a big game player. He delivered a great speech. I think
No, go ahead.
I think where the convention kind of whiffed a little bit, and this is the second consecutive night, is trying to fill in the picture of who Kamala Harris is. I mentioned Doug Emhoff did a great job, but in the prime time, to most people, 9:30 to 10 o'clock hour, it was one of the biggest yin and yangs I've ever seen. Bernie Sanders came out, and I thought, to me, that was like, if Joe Biden were the nominee, I get why you put Bernie Sanders out. You have a problem with the base. Nobody is motivated. Like, you're going to try to fire up progressives and young voters who are Bernie's core. That is not Kamala's problem right now. And when he got up there and started saying, we're going to tax the rich and increase Social Security, and we're going to have, campaign finance reform, I thought not one of those issues is in the top 30 of any sort of survey of what voters care about. And here is Kamala Harris, like one moment, now she's fourth fracking. She puts out a statement, harshly condemning flag burning, which, I thought both those things personally were great. And then in the next minute, she is putting out something on price controls. And so to have Bernie Sanders kind of pounding the podium saying, this is what we're going to do if we win, I cringed as a Democrat. And then you put out JD Pritzker, who was, kind of the quintessential Midwestern governor. He's a businessman. He's talking about cutting taxes and growing the economy. And I thought, this is the problem. Voters wonder who Kamala Harris is. And you have this primetime hour in which you kind of are going in every direction. And the night before, you had Hillary Clinton, kind of talking about cracking the glass ceiling, and Joe Biden talking about going forward, or kind of his agenda and what he accomplished, and Raphael Warnock talking about January 6th. They're kind of all over the place.
You actually encapsulated what I've been saying and tried to say in a much better way. But do you think that's a function of just the logistical hurdles that they've had to deal with in the last 30 days? Like, oh my God, I actually thought, okay, Bernie Sanders already had the invitation, and they were like, you can't take it back. Or is it more like they're trying to cater to everybody?
Yeah, no, I think you're right, Sean. I mean, look, you have done this with the RNC. I was at the DNC. Usually you plan your convention 6-7 months out. And if you're the incumbent, right, you kind of line up, let's say 2 to 3 months out, your speakers, you fine tune the messages based on your strengths and weaknesses of your coalition and kind of around the country. And if you're the challenger and you win your primary in April or May, you do the same thing. She's doing this in 3 weeks. I don't even think her campaign fully understands the electorate right now, nor do I think the Trump campaign does, because there's so much dust trying to settle. I mean, for the last month, really ever since that debate, every week has had 2 or 3 events that in any other campaign would be like the singular thing that history books would write about. And so I think, to your point, this is partly Joe Biden's, campaign or convention. It's partly hers. They don't fully know, what they don't know yet about the electorate. And they're trying to figure out what to run on a little bit. Like most candidates, they're message testing. They're trying to figure it out, which is where I think that price control, idea came from.
Right.
And so, yes, to cut them some slack as a kind of professional operator here, but then there's the world as it is versus the world you wish it would be. And I don't know, for her, yes, she's consolidated the base. She continues to, have some issues with young black men, with Latinos, and then obviously the all-important swing voters. I'm not sure so far how effective this convention has been with those core groups.
That was my sort of thought. Look, here's my analysis of last night. I think you put it better than I could. It felt very like, whoa, like head turning. I'm watching Bernie Sanders, as you put it, he was like, we need to have universal financing for campaigns. And I'm like, who the hell's talking about this?
Yeah.
And
totally.
then Chuck Schumer up there. And I was like, and then I will say this, just credit where credit is due. Doug Emhoff, I think, spoke about his wife and painted a picture of Kamala Harris that if you didn't know who she was or what she was running around, and somebody said, tell me about this woman, Kamala, that you're going to marry or that's your wife or that's going to join our company. He did a very good job. I was like, you know what? I actually kind of might like this person. And then I was like, wait a second, I remember her record. but I was like, dude, that was what I think was missing. Yeah. It was like Sanders talking about crazy left-wing stuff. Obama and Michelle, yes, did they give good speeches? They're really good at that. But I felt like it wasn't about her. It was about, this existential threat and Donald Trump and grievances. And, you're right. Michelle Obama, I felt like it was a therapy session.
Totally. Yeah. I mean, look, campaigns are about defining, the contours of the race.
Well, but so let me ask you. But this is the question I wanted to get to on this: is if it Democrats, according to polls, and a lot of independents don't know much about her, right? Yeah. And that's to be expected for a myriad of reasons. Are you guys okay with that, right? Meaning, if you think about what we just talked about with last night's program, is the feeling it doesn't matter. We just need to win, and we need to beat this guy Trump, which is how I think a lot of people felt when George W. Bush was running the first time. It was like, I don't really care. We need to win again, and this guy says he can win. Is it, I don't really care about her. I don't need to know much about her. I just need to know that she can win and vanquish Trump? Or are you guys like, hey, come on, give me something. I need to know who you are and what you stand for.
Yes. I think for the Democratic Party, it really is the former. Like, I think they're so excited that both, she's not Biden, she's not old, right? Like 80% of Democrats have said the last few years that they thought Joe Biden was too old. And as you say, they detest Donald Trump, right? I mean, that has been clear now since 2015. The issue really is independent and swing voters. I mean, Donald Trump, barely won in 2016. But he won. He closed the deal with enough swing voters in those Philly, Detroit, Milwaukee, Atlanta, Phoenix suburbs. And in 2020, Joe Biden did. And, Joe Biden kind of met the moment in the sense that he talked about, I'm going to lead the COVID response with science, and we're going to build back the economy and social justice. Whatever one thinks, those were the issues that voters said that were most at, the forefront of their mind. The worry as a Democrat is that we're talking to ourselves, right? That everyone in that hall, everyone in Chicago is like giddy with excitement. They kind of think Trump is stale, like this is it. We're finally turning the page, and the Obamas really leaned into that. The challenge is surveys don't show that is where, the swing voters are in states. Like, it's a jump ball, right? Trump's maybe up 1 or 2 in Pennsylvania. Then you see a poll that shows Kamala's up 1 or 2, right? Trump's probably up in those 4 Sun Belt states. Maybe she's up in Wisconsin and Michigan. I think it's going to take more than that unless Trump does something to, totally disqualify himself. But I don't know what that is at this point, because people have a pretty formed opinion of him. So, she has to, I think, close the deal. And to me, I'm hoping tonight that Bill Clinton and Tim Walz start filling in this picture a little more. Bill Clinton's a great economic messenger. People look at him and think, kind of competence on the economy. So I'm hoping that over the next 2 nights, they fill that picture in. But after the first 2 nights, Sean, I'm a little worried that there's been a little bit of a whiff on that.
Yeah, but you think about it, and I think we're on the same page on this. I mean, just straight up analysis-wise, right? I mean, we both come from different sides of this. But if I'm Team Kamala, I want more Doug Emhoff. I want people to say, I like this person. I thought again, I don't agree with him, but I was like, wow, he's painting a picture of a person that you could like. And that's what, frankly, a lot of people want to know is, do I like this person? Do I want them leading the country?
Yep.
I don't think that Bill Clinton, Tim Walz met her a Sunday ago, right? He can't be like, let me tell you this story about Kamala, when I was down and out, she called me, I had shingles. I don't know. I agree with you. I feel like you're programming something for a convention that's not happening. And I feel like, again, hey, don't get me wrong. I'm fine with that. It's just, I think you're going to walk out and yes, your base might be more fired up, but that's not really where you need to be right now. Yeah. And I think the funny thing is, I look at our convention, and granted, we circumstances changed, but I actually thought, wow, the programming was much more, and Trump was obviously a lot more focused and disciplined as we went into this. But I actually walked out and I thought that was the best run political convention of either side. And I thought, okay, now it's up to the Dems. I think, and I'm biased, I admit it, but I thought to myself, wow, like the single greatest thing that people are looking for right now is, who is this person that has replaced Joe Biden? And I don't feel like, outside of Doug Emhoff, I'm getting that.
Yeah, no, that's absolutely right. And that's why I said I thought the video of her as a prosecutor in that opening hour was powerful. And I would have almost made that a whole night. Like, just center around, she's a fighter. She took on tough challenges. It filled in a little more of the picture of who she is, kind of with an angle on substance and addressing what is probably her biggest leadership liability, which is she tough enough? Is she strong enough? And so, yeah, we agree on that front. There's 2 more nights, so we'll see.
I'd bring back Doug. Honest to God, the networks could carry it. But I thought last night, listen, again, I don't agree, but his lines at the end about how tough she is and da-da-da, I was like, dude, here's the thing. It was authentic, right? There's no one, say what you will, no one doubts that he knows her well. Yeah. And he speaks. And last night, it wasn't contrived. He was a little dorky. But it was like, it was real. And I'm like, okay, I get that. Like, how many of us haven't had that awkward moment, right? Where we're trying to figure out how to ask someone out, or he references fantasy football team. It was sort of like, too many politicians and too many people, when they give up and get their speech, I'm like, dude, that is so canned. Yeah. And you're reading off a teleprompter, and I can tell. I felt like I may not like what you're saying, but I think it's real. And I would just say, screw the program, put that guy back on, maybe have her sister or somebody else. But the networks are in. They're going to carry it and say, throw the program out, put these guys on. And I get it. If you look at the RNC, it was unorthodox, right? Hulk Hogan speaking, Dana White speaking. But it wasn't like, let me have Senator so-and-so. And I actually think it worked. The last thing I want to ask you, though, is about tonight. Tim Walz is speaking. Axios is out with this lead in its morning read this morning, talking about his gaffes. Again, I have an issue with them calling them gaffes. There are now concerns about his military record, which is documented over and over again. There's also concerns about now his use of talking about IVF, right? Yeah. And then there's concerns about how he talked about his DWI. Each of those, I'm not here to litigate. But my question for you is, are you concerned about this narrative that Tim Walz has a problem with being straight?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, last night I was kind of surprised when Barack Obama was just like, I love this guy, and kind of like glossed over it and just like didn't put any more meat on that bone a little bit. It is. The one thing for both of them is at some point they are going to have to sit for, interviews. There's obviously going to be the debates. We're all still trying to understand who Kamala Harris is. And that pick was her first, insight into her judgment. And, I know Kamala Harris a little bit. I know a lot of people who have worked for her. When she gets nervous, she has historically defaulted to this kind of, I don't want to make a mistake, I don't want to lose mentality. I thought that pick, it's now kind of documented about Josh Shapiro, but, it was this like quick snapback, like, okay, he's the safe pick, and made it, in a very short window. Absolutely. I mean, I obviously don't expect him to address this tonight, but as you say, the fact that Axios put that out, happened to be in the middle of the convention, so the tree kind of falls and nobody hears it. But obviously, within the DC bubble, within the political media, there's a little blood in the water, and I think that where this goes to his authenticity and this idea of like coach and dad and just a wholesome Midwestern all shocks governor that kind of balances a black woman from Oakland, that could start to pose some trouble for her. Absolutely. Because right now it's all about hope and change. Right?
Yeah, I agree. And I thought when Axios did it, again, I wasn't entirely excited about how they did it, but it just showed that there's a crack now in the armor. Yep. Dan, I do appreciate you sharing your time with us today and your insight. It's obviously really valuable during this week to understand where you guys are coming at this from. So thank you. I appreciate how generous you've been with your insight and your time. And I hope you'll come back as we get down the trail.
Anytime. Thank you for having me.
Thank you guys for being with us today. Tomorrow, big panel discussion Friday, as I mentioned, James Blair, the political director of the Trump campaign, about that critical ground game. What states are in play? How is the Trump campaign and its allies? This is going to be a very, very different ground game that we've seen in the past. How are they making sure that they get over the top in those critical states? We're going to hammer him about what their plan is to win and how they're going to do it. Thanks for being with us. Continue to subscribe. Hit those notification buttons, YouTube, Rumble, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and wherever you get your podcasts. We'll see you back here tomorrow. Thanks for watching. Well, if you enjoyed this content, make sure to like this video, subscribe, and click the notification bell to get more.